Welcome to the Vibrantly You podcast. We're your hosts, Megan Martineau.
Caitlin Cipriano. In this podcast, we talk about fitness and nutrition on your motherhood journey. Whether you're trying to conceive, pregnant, postpartum, or beyond, you're welcome here.
Nothing is off limits, and our goal is to support you in this important season of life so that you can feel vibrantly you. As a reminder, this information is not medical advice. Please see the show notes for more details. Welcome back to the Vibrantly You podcast. Today, I am here with Caitlin, our resident perinatal nutrition expert. And today, we're going to be talking about something a little different. We're going to be talking about cycle syncing, specifically in regards to trying to conceive. So, we've been doing a lot of pregnancy and postpartum stuff on this podcast, but we don't want to leave out trying to conceive. So, if you have noticed some weeks in your cycle that you feel like you can take on the world, and in other weeks you are more exhausted, maybe you're craving carbs, there is a reason for that. So your hormones shift throughout the month, throughout your cycle, and those changes impact everything: your mood, metabolism, cravings, energy levels, all the things. So, in today's episode, we are going to do a deep dive into cycle syncing and also just thinking about it from a lens of like tracking your cycle if you are desiring to get pregnant and like things to pay attention to. So, we're going to talk about a way to align with your nutrition, movement, lifestyle with your body's natural rhythm. Caitlin, I know this is something that you are so passionate about. You work with a lot of clients on. So, let's start with the basics of what is cycle syncing and why we should care about it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics, so try not to dive too deep here. But cycle syncing, like you mentioned, is all about working with your body and creating awareness around its natural hormonal shifts. This is a term that was coined by Elisa Vitti, and she's the founder of Flow Living, and it refers to making adjustments to our nutrition, movement, other lifestyle changes so that they can line up with the four phases of our cycle. I think that this maybe has a tendency to come across a little on the like woo-woo side of things, but I think if you're feeling skeptical about this after you listen to the things I'm going to mention, it will make a lot of sense. You'll have a lot of light bulb moments based on how you're feeling and what some of the recommendations are going to be. So it's really thinking about, instead of like every day is the same, like forcing yourself maybe through workouts leading when your period starts and you're exhausted, or, ignoring cravings that you're experiencing. Cycle syncing really helps you make smaller, more intentional shifts that support those hormonal shifts that are happening throughout the month in your body. You're going to experience things like more energy, fewer mood swings, and just more balance, I think.
Yeah, I think this is like really powerful information, especially because so many of us were just taught that our cycle is like having your period. And I even noticed
Yeah.
this today that some people will be like, "Oh, I'm on my cycle," talking about their period. And I'm like, "That's not your cycle. That's menstruation. That's your period." Like, and it's mind-blowing to me. I mean, you and I have been working together for so long, so I feel like I have just learned so much from you, and it has just become like second nature to me when we're thinking about our cycles, that I forget that so many people still do not have like a great understanding of all the phases of the cycle and what's happening and how to support our bodies. But it is information, I think, especially in today's climate, that women absolutely need. They need this information, and it's just really empowering to like know what's going on with your body. Um, so yeah, because there's a lot more going on than just bleeding and your period.
Oh my gosh, yes, but you're so right. This is not something that is taught in school growing up. Like, I know that I think we talked about this with one of our guest speakers that we're going to have on, and it's just not like readily available information. People are learning like these bits and pieces from providers like ourselves on social media and just are like, whoa, like I did not know that, but now it makes so much sense. So we're going to dive in first with just like, okay, what are the four phases of the menstrual cycle, and how does each one bring on different hormonal shifts, and what can we like expect during those changes? So, like you mentioned, the first phase is our menstrual phase, our period. This is going to be day one of your cycle until you stop actively bleeding. So, during this is when estrogen and progesterone are at their lowest. This is typically again when your energy levels are down again. And this is a really good time to think a little bit more like inward, a great time for reflection. Your metabolism is going to be a little bit slower, and you may notice that you experience changes to your bowel movements and digestive system symptoms. So it's a really good time to focus on like nutrient dense foods. We're actively bleeding here, so this one may not come to like much of a surprise, but this is when we really want to focus on iron rich foods as well as magnesium rich foods. So we want to think for iron, you can include both animal and plant-based sources. This is either hemi or non-hemi iron. So our hemi iron is going to come from those animal sources like grass-fed beef, chicken, fish. Grass-fed beef, if you do beef, is like very dense in iron. So this is a great option during your period. But also those non-hemi sources as well. Things like lentils and leafy greens are awesome as well. We just want to think about pairing them with a vitamin C source so that you really optimize the absorption of that iron in those plant-based sources. With our magnesium-rich foods, we're thinking things like nuts, seeds, dark chocolate, which is my favorite any time of the month, but definitely during menstrual phase. So those are things that we want to really think about, like adding in intentionally.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's probably why we crave some chocolate when we're on our periods.
Yes,
It's your body being like, magnesium, please. Um,
absolutely.
and then, yeah, I'll just add in too some like quick exercise things for each cycle.
Yeah,
So
please.
when it comes to the menstrual phase, so again, like you kind of already mentioned, like energy's down, your hormones are down. So you might naturally feel like you don't have energy to do a more intense workout. So something like yoga, stretching, walking, even some like gentle strength training, like it's probably not going to be a time where you are hitting PRs and really pushing yourself or doing HIIT, but you might just be doing some more like endurance type weightlifting where you're doing like higher reps, low weight kind of thing. So something gentle. I always tell people too, like, listen to your body during this phase, do what feels good. Some people feel like they want to do a lot and like girl go for it. I support that, but I do feel like in general a lot of people are wanting some more gentle activities during this time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it depends like what part you're on. Like day one, day two, you may not feel like doing much. And so that lighter activity may feel better. But by, day four, day five, you might be feeling like your energy is coming back up and you're ready to get back to your kind of normal routine.
Yeah,
So,
that's a great point. So let's jump to the follicular phase,
yeah.
which is the next phase.
Yeah, and so this is again like when you stop bleeding, so probably like day 5 to day 7 through until ovulation. And so this typically for most people lasts somewhere between 10 and 20 days. I know that's a big range, but when people ovulate, it does have a range as well. And so as we're talking about this, like not like one day is going to be set in stone. Everyone's cycle is going to vary. And if you have an irregular cycle as well, this is may impact things. So, think about this as it pertains to you. But I'm going to give general day ranges, so that's helpful. With hormones during this phase, this is when estrogen and the follicle stimulating hormone FSH are rising. Oh, I always mess that one up. But it is a time when you should notice that energy levels are starting to improve. This tends to be a time where people are more creative and can be a little more like outside the box and flexible from that perspective. Our metabolism still might start off a little bit slower, so kind of like still thinking on the lighter meal side may feel better, and focusing on foods that are going to help support your liver detox pathways. And when I say this, I don't mean that we are doing like a detox that you may generally think of. These are just foods that are supportive of your liver as they go through their normal processes. So our bodies are detoxing just fine, or just fine, but we want to support them in a way that feels good. So these are thinking about including things like cruciferous veggies like broccoli or cauliflower to help metabolize any excess estrogen that may be left over from your period. Another thing that tends to be helpful during the follicular phase are probiotic rich foods. These are really great for supporting digestion. So things like kimchi and sauerkraut, kombucha, any pickles, like anything that you like in that realm is awesome to include there.
Yeah, I love these suggestions. And it's just so helpful to know like what to incorporate when. And I think like it maybe sounds overwhelming at first, but I think once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to implement here. Um, and then movement wise, so as your energy levels are starting to improve, you might be feeling more called to get into that resistance type training, strength training, low impact cardio is usually preferred here. So you're kind of starting to gradually increase and work your way up to those harder types of workouts.
Absolutely. And I think because of, again, how your energy levels ebb and through your cycle, that really makes sense because as we go into our next phase, which is ovulatory phase, this is when our energy peaks. And so this is like, plan any social gatherings that you have during your ovulatory phase because that is the like prime time. This is going to be the shortest phase. This is like 24 hours after your egg releases. So it's typically in that like 13 to 15 day before your next period realm. And this is the most important anchor point if you are trying to conceive. You want to know when you are ovulating and what that window looks like for you. Yes, keeping track of your period is important, but I would argue that if you're trying to conceive, this is where you need to be really spending the most time understanding and figuring out how your body feels, what your cervical mucus looks like. Like, we're not diving into all of that right now, but that is something that is going to be most important for you if you are trying to conceive, is just really understanding how you feel and what is going on in your body during that time. From a nutrition and food perspective, you're going to want to continue to focus on things from follicular, so carrying over those cruciferous veggies, focusing on anti-inflammatory foods, including good sources of fiber. I think this is a good time to interject with the thing that I always talk about is making sure that when you're planning your meals that you want to make sure that we're having protein, healthy fats, fiber alongside our carbs. So pair those all together during your meals so that you are helping to support your satiety, your blood sugar levels, your energy, and your hormones. That's going to be your best friend. And we'll dive in a little deeper to that in a moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love too that you mentioned great time for socializing, especially for us introverts. Ovulation is the time. When it comes to movement, this is also the time for those HIIT classes, for hitting those PRs, really pushing yourself in the gym. You can, do spin, like any of those things that requires a lot of energy. Like now is the time. And that's when you're going to feel like on top of the world in your workouts and being like, yes, I can do anything. I am so strong. I am so powerful. So I always tell people try to like harness that ovulation energy in your workouts because guaranteed you will feel like a badass.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We can all use that for at least a couple days out of the month, for sure. And then as you wrap up that ovulatory phase, now we're into the second half of our cycle. So this is the luteal phase, and this is typically 9 to 16 days before your period starts. This is when our estrogen continues rising and progesterone is going to also increase. Um, with progesterone, this is time where it is at its like going to be at its highest and it's peaking. And when it is at its peak, your metabolism actually increases and you will most notably feel quite a bit hungrier. The research shows that the metabolic increase is somewhere between 250 to 400 calories for people, which is pretty significant if you think about it. So I always encourage people when you notice this during your phase, add an extra snack or make one or two of your meals a little bit bigger because you are going to notice this change. It's very significant for most people. Um, you are going to probably start to notice that energy dip again as you get closer to your period. And this is also a time where if you have PMS symptoms, they might show up as well. From a food and nutrition focus, during the luteal phase, we really want to pay attention to that blood sugar balance. So, continuing to pair our food groups together, protein, healthy fats, fiber alongside our carbs. And also, this is when you want to start thinking about, again, those magnesium rich foods. So, again, like our dark chocolate, spinach, pumpkin seeds are great. And also some serotonin boosting foods to help with mood because of like PMS symptoms and things like that. And uh, leafy greens and quinoa are both good sources there.
So, say you are actively trying to conceive, and so this
Mm,
luteal phase is also like your 2 week wait. Would you
yeah.
make any changes to some of the foods that you're focusing on if you're like hoping that you're kind of moving into pregnancy, or would you still focus on these same kinds of foods?
You can continue to focus on these same types of foods. I think it's just if you are really actively trying to conceive, the luteal phase is really important to pay attention to. So I would just keep being really intentional with what you add in. So you can have, your kind of base foods that you typically like and enjoy, but maybe you're sprinkling some extra things in. So you're like, okay, like let's add some pumpkin seeds onto this like yogurt bowl, or maybe I'm going to add some spinach into my like omelet at breakfast. So I think it's just about again making these small intentional shifts instead of feeling like you need to overhaul everything. The 2 week window is stressful enough, so we don't need to think about making these like huge shifts.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it is so fascinating that your metabolism is speeding up. I feel like that explains a lot. I know I always feel hungrier before my period. And so it makes sense, just looking at these hormone things, like you were saying, like that's why there's a reason for it. In terms of movement, we are going to do a whole separate episode on exercising in the luteal phase/2 week wait. But generally, you can keep doing what you're doing. Resistance training is still great. And if you're noticing that energy starting to dip, just listening to your body and kind of pulling off with intensity is always a great thing. And yeah, we'll talk more about specifically if you are trying to conceive considerations to take, but that'll be next week's episode. So, if you are someone who is not necessarily trying to conceive, but you just want to be tracking your cycle, paying attention to how you're feeling during these different phases, like supporting your body through them, what are the long-term benefits of following this cycle syncing and specifically regards to nutrition?
Absolutely. So, not only is this really helpful when you're trying to conceive, but regardless, like if you're just trying to improve your fertility, or even if you are, postpartum, this is going to just help you feel, I think, more in alignment with yourself. It's going to improve your energy levels throughout the month so that you don't necessarily notice these like massive, like crashes in energy. You're still going to feel like, again, fluctuations, but hopefully it feels generally pretty steady. The biggest thing that I find people notice is that they have fewer cravings and mood swings, especially right before their period at the end of that luteal phase, and then better digestion and metabolism throughout as well, because we're really addressing, again, intentionally adding in things that are going to be more supportive based on where you are in the month. And then generally less like, again, like period discomfort, like those PMS symptoms. I just generally find that when we're being intentional with adding these foods in that help based on the phase that you're in, that you're supporting your body. So you're dealing with less acne, less cramping, all of those things that tend to be annoying that we hate about our period outside of the bleeding tend to really dissipate for a lot of people. And it doesn't mean that they're never going to be there, of course, but it's just really supportive for the body.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge benefit on its own, just helping with PMS and once menstruation does come, because I know, that's a concern for a lot of people, just
Yeah.
wanting to feel better. And even like the luteal phase, I feel like sometimes I hear a lot of people talking about how in the luteal phase in general, they're just like, ugh, I'm in my luteal phase. And if you can really improve how you, because that's a 2 week window, right? So if you can really
Yeah.
improve how you're feeling half of the month with nutrition, that is a massive, massive win. And I think such an underutilized and underrated tool. So I think this episode is just chock full of so much fantastic information. But if someone is brand new to this concept of cycle syncing and they are just feeling a little overwhelmed because you gave us so many great things, what would be something simple that you would recommend someone start with if they're wanting to get into this?
Yeah, and I think it can feel overwhelming because it is a new approach or new way of thinking about how your body is shifting throughout the month instead of that sort of more like fixed every day is the same, but why is this happening, now? Is to just simply start tracking how you feel. So this isn't like that you have to, you know, go into MyFitnessPal and like log everything and be super detailed, but just, like get a journal and jot things down, or, use the notes section on your app and start to pay attention to your energy and your mood, cravings, and when they're popping up for you. Because once you see what the patterns are, you can start to make those small changes. Even if you are someone that has an irregular cycle and you're not sure if you're, ovulating, but again, you're wanting to work towards trying to conceive, being able to keep track of things and have that data is really powerful. And once you, again, know what those patterns are, you can start to be like, okay, like this is when I know I need to add in more iron-rich foods. Or I am noticing I'm having a lot of cramping. Like, let me focus on including more magnesium-rich foods in that, first chunk of my cycle. So again, these small shifts just can really add up and make a huge difference in how you feel.
Okay, yes, I love that advice. Just these small changes, just trying to really pay attention to how your body is feeling. I think that's really powerful. And I know that you have some amazing resources for this to also help people get started. So, do you want to tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to be coming out with a full cycle syncing guide, and it's going to break down these foods for each phase, plus just easy recipes that you can incorporate and follow along with. This is something that I do with my one-on-one clients. So if you want more than just like a guide and want to take it a step further too, I do offer that as well. But you'll be able to find that information all linked up in the show notes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, we will add that there. And of course, if you don't already, be sure to follow Caitlin on her Instagram at Wholesome Huntress Nutrition because she shares a lot of tips there, a lot of stuff specifically around cycle syncing. And Caitlin has her own YouTube channel that she has started. So definitely head over there as well. Is it the same handle on YouTube?
Yes, Wholesome
Okay.
Huntress.
Yeah.
Yep.
So find her on Wholesome Huntress Nutrition on YouTube as well. And that wraps up today's episode. So if you loved it, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend who might want to learn about cycle syncing. And we will be back next week to talk about exercising during the 2-week wait.